Solicitor General has many responsibilities, including law enforcement, emergency preparedness, fire protection, and probably least common known, animal welfare. The protection of animals is important to the people of Ontario, and it is important to our government. Since I was elected in 2018, the protection of animals has been personally important to me. I am the proud owner of 2 rescue pets, Bruce and Edward, a cat and a dog, and I also had my very first private member's bill, which received unanimous consent at first reading, aimed at protecting our pets. We have also heard firsthand across the province through community meetings and roundtables about how important the issue of pets are and animals are to the people of Ontario. Over the past several months, we've been taking steps needed to keep animals safe, including amending the Ontario Society of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, passed this May. Today, we are going to tell you how this government will play an even more meaningful role in enforcement. It is now my pleasure this morning to introduce the Honourable Sylvia Jones, Solicitor General of Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. You've been a great help as we've prepared this legislation, meeting stakeholders and hosting roundtables. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Ministry Courtyard. As you saw, we're doing a little work out front, so this seemed appropriate. We have some special four-legged friends who want to say hello a bit later, but right now I'd like to introduce you to some distinguished people who are joining us today. Paula Milne, Ontario's Interim Chief Inspector. Rob Godfrey, former chair of the Ontario Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. I think Rob has got the Gibby. Rob continues to be a leading advocate for greater animal protection. He's been a key participant in our government's consultation process, and I would like to thank him for his insight and guidance. Kevin Stroban, the Executive Director of the Lincoln County Humane Society, has also joined us. The Lincoln County Humane Society is one of the first local SPCAs and humane societies to step forward and support our government in our interim enforcement role over the past few months. Ontarians care passionately about the welfare of our animals. In fact, 60% of households have at least one pet. Animals are a great source of friendship and companionship. Today, our government is proposing what is a first for animal welfare in Canada: a provincially operated enforcement team that includes locally deployed provincial inspectors and specialized inspectors for agriculture, zoo, aquariums, and horses. Separate events drove this change. In January, the Ontario Superior Court of Justice struck down key provisions of the Ontario Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. At the same time, the OSPCA informed us that after 100 years of enforcing animal welfare laws, they were no longer interested in the enforcement piece. Our government acted swiftly to ensure that animals would remain protected and their abusers would continue to be brought to justice. We launched a new toll-free number for the public to report animal welfare concerns, 1-833-9-ANIMAL. Our call center received almost 9,000 calls in the first 8 weeks after the launch. To fill the enforcement gap caused by the OSPCA's departure, we appointed a new interim chief. Those are also some of our assets. To fill the enforcement gap caused by the OSPCA's departure, we appointed a new interim chief animal welfare inspector, Paula Milne. Today, over 66 provincial inspectors are working across Ontario with local SPCAs and humane societies. It has been the most effective means of protecting animals while the government worked with stakeholders and partners to build a new provincial enforcement model. This afternoon, I will introduce the Provincial Animal Welfare Services Act that, if passed, would create a new animal welfare enforcement system with a provincially appointed Chief Animal Welfare Inspector, who will hire frontline inspectors to be deployed across Ontario. Under the proposed model, the province will update prohibitions, for example, not allowing dogfighting equipment to be returned to their owners, Have inspectors partner with local police on criminal investigations. Train Crown attorneys to better support animal welfare prosecutions. Our proposed enforcement model will protect animals and introduce the strongest penalties in Canada for offenders. We are also building public trust in enforcement with an accountable and transparent oversight framework that includes a one-window public complaints process. The proposed legislation will enable Ontario to tackle issues such as puppy farms or set parameters on the ownership of exotic animals. This will be achieved in consultation with our stakeholders. The proposed provincial enforcement model and legislation are the result of consultations with the public, industry experts, veterinarians, shelter organizations, police, municipal partners, amongst others. If this bill is passed, we intend to implement the model starting January 1st, 2020, and we will always ensure that the public is heard. I mentioned earlier how much the public cares deeply about the welfare of our animals. In an online survey, Ontario had the opportunity to share their thoughts on how to improve animal protection. Over 16,000 people responded in just over 3 weeks. 89%, 9 out of 10 respondents said that animal welfare was extremely important to them. I've said from the beginning that animal protection across Ontario can and will be made better. Better protection for animals, clear roles and responsibilities for inspectors, greater accountability and transparency for the public. Finally, we are proposing a strong Made in Ontario model that will meet today's animal protection needs with built-in flexibility to respond to future challenges to protect the welfare of all animals in Ontario. Thank you, and it's now my pleasure to introduce Rob Godfrey.
Solicitor General, thank you very much. You deserve some congratulations today, because today is a great day for animal welfare. You know, for a lot of you that live or work around Queen's Park, or for the members of the media that cover this stuff on a daily basis, we talk about things that have a political stripe. Is something conservative? Is someone furthering a particular agenda? Well, animal welfare in the province does not have a political stripe. You don't put a price tag on love of an animal. You want to make sure that animals are taken care of in this province, and that doesn't matter what party you support. And that doesn't matter what your political views are. Animals in this province are important. And we in Ontario are now leading the way for animal welfare. The key thing in this province is that we live in a complicated jurisdiction. We have domestic animals, we have agricultural animals, we have zoos and aquariums, and of course we deal with exotics from time to time. This legislation brings Ontario to new heights in animal welfare protection. It takes the protection of animals out of a volunteer organization in the Ontario SPCA with little or no oversight, and provides a Made in Ontario solution where there is real oversight to the Solicitor General and to the new Chief Inspector. As well, you will finally have Crown attorneys prosecuting animal cruelty cases, something that has not happened in the past. The biggest thing here is that we have stiffer penalties, not only for what has happened in the past. In the past, you would have people who committed animal cruelty be fined $1,000, and if they did it again, they would get fined $1,000 again, and then again $1,000. Finally, we have a system in place where repeat offenders will feel the wrath of the law for mistreating animals or neglecting animals. Another key point of the proposed legislation is corporate offenses. So finally, for the first time, we have included in legislation penalties for corporations that are found to be mistreating animals. Once again, there are penalties for repeat offenders that go up. What we have today is something that we should all be proud of. Something that, once again, as I said at the beginning, we can put down our political swords and come together and be grateful that we live in a kinder and gentler society that believes that those who can't protect themselves should be protected by us, by the government, by the taxpayer, by our society. And for that, I congratulate Solicitor General Jones, Christine Hogarth, and of course our Premier. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm Kevin Struband, Executive Director of the Lincoln County Humane Society in St. Catharines. I am also a Provincial Animal Welfare Inspector, and I stand here with 4 of my colleagues and the Chief today. I would like to thank the Government of Ontario, Premier Ford, Solicitor General Sylvia Jones, and MPP Christine Hogarth for this announcement today. I would also like to thank my fellow Humane Societies and SPCAs that are the leading organizations in fighting animal cruelty on the front lines in communities across Ontario and across Canada. After more than 100 years of enforcement in Ontario, SPCAs, Humane Societies, and inspectors are the experts when it comes to the implementation of animal protection policies, especially at a time when Ontario embarks on a new regime of animal protection enforcement. All animals in Ontario deserve safety, protection, and compassion. And as such, we are pleased that SPCAs and Humane Societies were able to step in and provide a lifeline to the animals and the government throughout this recent 6-month transitional period that ensured no animal fell through the cracks. While enforcement is transitioning directly to government, we appreciate the goal of providing province-wide service. We will continue to provide support to maintain the best care possible for animals. Having personally served Ontarians for almost 3 decades, I am confident that parts of this legislation will certainly better protect animals in our communities. Today's announcement is a critical first step in establishing a new solution for protecting animals in Ontario. The new legislation includes aspects of our own recommendations to government, and while it is a work in progress, we feel that additional protections are required with this new legislation, and we will continue to advocate for stronger protection for animals in Ontario. This is an exciting time for animal protection in our province, and while we have more work to do, we look forward to continuing discussions with our government. Thank you.
And now the Minister and the participants on stage will be open for questions. Does anybody have any questions for the Minister?
Will these new penalties include jail time?
Yes, potentially, upon conviction, yes.
What type of animal cruelty?
Well, it's, as you can imagine, there are minimum sentences up to a maximum. Some of them are financial, and some can be 6 months jail time for initial serious offenses.
Like what? Describe the offense.
Dogfighting.
And also, the inspections, the specialized inspectors that are going to go to zoos and aquariums, can you tell me how many of those there are going to be? Is it going to be a team? Sorry. There we go. Okay. And will the results of those inspections be made public? The OSPCA never made them public, and there was a great call for that.
So part of the motivation for making the changes legislatively was the oversight piece. In individual inspections, we will have to let the courts and the justice system play out before we would open up any of the individual ongoing investigations, so similar to other judicial inquiries. But in terms of the oversight piece, there are going to be some specialists who operate within the OPP, as well as the animal inspectors. And I think it's important to understand that there is going to be a consistent level of training. So what we have right now is a system that frankly depends on where you are in the province of Ontario. Once we have provincial animal inspectors in place, they will be consistently trained. We will be training Crown attorneys so that when investigations happen, when charges are laid, hopefully we will have a better conviction rate. So again, individual examples would suggest that there is an inconsistency in how the investigations are occurring. And that has led in certain situations where charges are thrown out or the conviction rate is not as successful as we would like it to be. Once we consistently train all of the inspectors, some of that should go away. When there is criminal investigations, it's important to note that the OPP, the local police, will be part of those investigations because they have the skill set that we need to ensure conviction rates.
And what's your baseline of how long this type of training should take? When would you like to see, that a training for a Crown prosecutor complete so that they're ready to kind of better handle that? I mean, do you have a goal in mind of a certain level of a conviction rate and by a certain year or something like that? No
goals that way, but what we want to do is ensure that people have the tools and the resources they can successfully complete. I think for many of us who have heard about some fairly egregious examples, we get frustrated that they are then thrown out at the court level. So I'm confident that with consistent training across the province, we will avoid that issue.
OSPC in enforcing any or convicting anyone is the fact that they weren't funded properly and that they had to rely on the very people they convict or were trying to convict to help them raise funds. Has that been taken out of the system? And if so, how much money is being incurred by all the extra training and officers?
So when the OSPCA shared with us that they no longer were interested in the enforcement piece, that's what they were being funded for. So that will change the model as we move forward to the provincial inspectors. I was willing to work with the OSPCA to move forward with a system. They chose a different path, and we're here today. And frankly, I'm very excited about the model. So we will fund from within our resources, but they are provincial resources, and we will make the necessary funding and ensure that the model works province-wide.
Okay, and then going into the next chapter, there's exotic animals being bred in Ontario for sale for privates, and there's other issues with exotic animals. I met a gentleman that had a spitting cobra for whatever reason. Are you going to include enforcement into that area also?
So the beautiful part of the process that brings us here today is that we've already brought forward and brought together those stakeholders, and those discussions will continue. I think that many municipal governments are going to want to participate in those discussions. There can be different levels with additional bylaws that might be in place in certain communities that are driven by a municipal bylaw as opposed to changes that we're bringing forward with our legislation. But there's lots of opportunities to have discussions with both stakeholders as well as the inspectors going forward. Sorry,
Yes.
Are you going to ban exotic animals from being bred and raised in Ontario?
it's not in the legislation, no.
Do you, are veterinarians, have they always been required to report suspicion of animal abuse, or is that new? And how will that work?
To the best of my knowledge, they have. Yes. There, I got a yes from the 30-year veteran.
Time for one more question.
Minister, if I can, just on a different topic, I know that the Red Tape Services Minister discussed yesterday the move towards 24-hour alcohol consumption in airports. I know that's that ministry, but what kind of role, because obviously as Solicitor General, can you just elaborate a little bit on the ministry's input in this and just what role you played in developing this new measure, I suppose, and if any role was played, kind of why this was kind of thought to be a good idea?
So Minister Sicario was previous my parliamentary assistant. We've had lots of conversations. Every red tape initiative that they are bringing forward was as a result of conversations with different ministries and different ministers. So lots of conversations about how we can make government smarter and more efficient.
But can you just on that note, can you just elaborate on what role your ministry played, and again, why you think that this was, something that would have been a good idea, required,
Well, I think it speaks to making government and making the consumer's pathway easier. We're looking at all forms of red tape reduction and red tape opportunities, and frankly, it's not limited to one ministry. So Minister Sicario, by his very nature, has this ability to connect and work with other ministries to find those efficiencies. He's been doing a ton of meetings and stakeholder feedback to hear what people are interested in and how we can move forward.
One last question.
One more question. Can we just get your reaction to a video that was obtained that appears to show a suspect with a gun in the back of a police cruiser in 51 Division?
I haven't seen the video, I'm sorry.
Yeah, someone who had been arrested, who had he was already cuffed in the back of a cruiser, and he still had a firearm with him.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I haven't seen the video, so I can't comment until I've seen it. Thank you.